Hi, it's Mike. I'm the Sewing Salesman from QT Fabrics. I sell quilt shops all the way from Tennessee to Florida to Louisiana and everywhere in between. I drive a lot. And over the years, I've learned a lot from my stores about how to quilt, and I hope to pass in these videos some of that information along to you. So today we're going to do a quilt out of Dan Morris's Mustang Sunset fabric, a gorgeous horse line of Mustangs in his watercolor kind of washed look. And there's some beautiful horses and some silhouettes which are really trendy right now. And so all of these fabrics in a couple of hours are going to be an applique quilt using the applique method, and it's going to be a beautiful quilt in 2 hours or 3 hours or midnight, I hope. Anyway, this is the quilt we're going to make is Cowboy Memories 2, designed by Heidi Pridemore for the Whimsical Workshop. You can get all this information at qtfabrics.com. She also made Cowboy Memories 1. This Cowboy Memories 2 uses the patches in the quilt, and I like that better. The Cowboy Memories 1 just uses an all-over horse print in the middle, which makes it a little more generic. You can also, with these fabrics, use the Lazy Girl canvas bag pattern to make 2 different colorways of a bag to carry horse poop out of the barn. Or you can make an apron or a shirt or an iPad holder. So lots of fun things to make out of this fabric. This quilt will first be sent to A&E Fabrics in Pensacola, Florida. So when I'm all done, if you want to see the actual quilt, take a trip to the beautiful white sands of Pensacola and stop by A&E. Tell them I sent you. And then she has all the fabric too. So if you want to buy the fabric, you can head off there. So for that cowboy, cowgirl, cow, trans, cis, gender, whatever person in your life, get your cowboy boots on. Oh, that went better in my head. And let's get sewing a cowboy quilt. The first thing we're going to do is iron the fabric that you take out of the bag. When you get it from the store, it's probably all wrinkly. And I wanted to show you some things about fabric that I learned from the bosses at QT Fabrics. You know, QT Fabrics is America's oldest fabric company since 1807. And we have America's oldest managers since God knows when. But most of the people in my company that run my company have been there more than 35 years. A premier cotton chemist works for our company that's worked there forever. I think he's 100. But anyway, they taught me a lot about cotton and how it works. And one of the things you probably already know about cotton is it stretches along the bias. That's diagonally along the fabric. And you probably even know that it'll stretch from selvage to selvage. So the selvages are the white edges. This is how it's printed on the roller. It's pinned down by little pins on the edges. So fabric will stretch crosswise, but it won't stretch lengthwise. And that's because of the way they weave the threads, the cotton threads, onto the loom. So it doesn't stretch longwise, but it stretches widthwise. And you don't want to stretch this out of shape. You want to work with squared up fabric pretty much. So the first thing you do is you get your fabric comb and you iron it with steam. There's steam. And you iron it lengthwise, up and down, the long way along the selvage. So that way, if you iron it with steam crosswise, across the way, from the selvage to the center, you might pull it out as square and stretch the fabric. Cotton fabric has a property that when it gets hot and wet, it'll go wherever you want it to go, and then when it cools down, it stays there. Don't you wish you could do that to your kids? So that's kind of what they do with sleeves, is they get them hot and wet on a dress form, and then let it cool, and then the sleeve will stay formed in a curve. So that's when you iron it, get it hot and wet, let it cool before you move it, and then it'll be perfectly square. So using that same concept, when you got your panel home, you probably noticed it's all wonky, and the squares are out of square, and you're like, this fabric was printed wrong. Well, if it was cheap fabric that you bought at a chain store, it would have been printed on a roller and would be printed wonky. But this fabric that you get at your local quilt shop is quilt quality fabric, and QT Fabrics is printed with a screen printing process where the screens are printed exactly square on grain. So this gets printed perfectly square, but then it goes through another process where it gets double enrolled, it's called, where the fabric is folded in half on a machine and then pulled through a machine and rolled onto a bolt, which is that cardboard flat board that your store sells fabric off of. And that usually pulls more in the center than on the edge. So it pulls all these squares wonky, and when you try to go sew them into squares, it's really hard if they're wonky. So you use the same ironing method of getting the square hot and wet and moist by rubbing your iron over it gently. And out, don't burn your finger, out, don't burn the fabric. And then while it's hot and wet, you can move it around and squish it around into any shape you want it, but you can get it perfectly square. And then the important thing is, leave it alone, don't touch it. Think about, oh, I don't know, whatever you think about while you're sewing. And then when it's cool, then they'll be perfectly square to cut out and turn into the squares in the quilt. So I'm going to get these ironed up, and we'll come back cutting in a sec.